Hello, hope you had a lovely lunch. Thank you for coming back. We're very excited to kick off this afternoon with Kieren McCarthy, who needs very little introduction about Nominet and governance in a one-year personal perspective. So thank you, Kieren.
Thank you, Jen. Hi, how you all doing? Let's start with why am I here? And I'm here because I came to the summit last year, and I came because I wanted to persuade those among you who are Nominet members to vote for me. I was standing for the board. And I'm pleased to say that I won that election. I'm now on the board. So after I'd been elected, Helmut said to me, will you come back for the next one and tell us how it was? And I said, of course. So that's why I'm here. It's been a year on, and the platform I stood on was for better communication and better engagement. That's what I felt was fundamentally missing from what Nominet was doing, and that's what I stood on. And so I'm here to engage and to communicate. That's what I said I would do, and that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm here to let you know what my perspective is, having been on Nominet for a year, and to hear what your perspective is of what changes you've seen, not seen, etc. So what is the current state of Nominet? Now, actually, before I say that, I'm assuming everyone here knows who Nominet is. Is that right? Can you stick up your hands if you know who Nominet is and what Nominet does? Well, actually, no. Okay, let's do it a different way. If you don't know who Nominet is or what it does, stick up your hand quickly. Okay? Okay. So Nominet runs the .uk registry, and that's its main job. You should know the background of why I stood and the background of why I feel that it was important for there to be change. There was a special meeting 2 years ago. Our members felt that the organization had gone the wrong direction, and they had a vote, and they voted off the chair and the CEO and a whole bunch of board members. So there was a big, big turnaround. And then I was sort of a part of the new board that are trying to get Nominet to where we think is a better place. And that's why I say it's stable but still in flux. Since that EGM, which was 2 years ago, there's an entire new board. Every single person on the board is a new person, and there's a new CEO, a new CFO, and a new, they should say CTO, not COO. So I don't know how many of you work for large organizations, but if you've changed the entire board and you've changed the 3 main executives, it's pretty destabilizing. And so a lot of the work that's being done is to basically stabilize it. And so it is stable, but there's still a lot of movement going on. And that's what I'll tell you about. What is going on right now is investing very heavily in the tech, i.e. the way that .uk registry works, the software. There's various parts of software that work. There's the public-facing stuff. There's the stuff that you see in the industry. There's the stuff that is purely internal. All of that software and all of the servers is all going through a massive refresh and update. Part of the reason for that was under the previous administration, they hadn't invested enough in that at all. And it was outdated. And so while we're doing a complete technology refresh, we're also moving to a better architecture. It's a big project. I don't know how many of you have been behind big tech projects, but that's taken up a lot of time. And at the end of that, Nominet should be in a really good place. It should be one of the best technical setups of any registry that there is right now. So that's a lot of the work that's going on. And then revamping the finance function, there's a new CFO. She has got basically brought in better software, which gives you much greater insight into each aspect of the business. And if any of you ever work for a big organization, although Nominet's sort of medium size, getting the right finance software in place is massively important. It enables you to track what's going on, enables you to test theories, it enables you to function better as an organization. So this is very sort of internal stuff, but it's been taking up a lot of time. And then the focus is on the DNS and registry services. The controversy with the previous administration was they were focusing a lot on cyber services, which is not what the membership wanted. They wanted to focus on .uk, focus on DNS, focus on registry, and that's the focus. So that's what's going on currently with Nominet. What's next is, I would say next, when I say next, I mean next year, this time next year. I should be running through, hopefully, if I'm invited, running through what's actually happened with these. Strengthening the .uk registry. There's a lot of work that needs to be done with that. It's been going along for a long time, but I think it needs Well, you tell me. I think it needs a sort of a boost. Improved communications is one of the most persistent complaints about Nominet, is that it doesn't communicate very well. So there's a big focus on how to do that. A clear vision and purpose. There's going to be a board strategy meeting next month, month after. And the idea is, we moved away from where Nominet was going, and there is a general vision and focus of what Nominet wants to do, but it's not very clear and persistent. So we're having this big discussion about it to come up with a very clear way of what we think Nominet should be doing and how it should be doing it, and then relay that clearly to you as members. I'm assuming most of you are members. Better member engagement ties in with communication, and a sharper focus on the future, in the sense that it'll be very clear what Nominet is planning to do and will do, and that will be communicated well and focused on well. That's the goal. That's where we're at. So that's a sort of corporate update. But what I'm most interested, my slides are less than ideal, but there you go. What I wanted to talk to you about was I stood for election to join the Nominet board because I've been a journalist most of my life, and I also worked for an organization called ICANN, and I saw that there's very significant issues I felt with Nominet, and every few years there was this big explosion of frustration between the staff and the members and the board, and it would cause real ructions, and I felt it was undermining Nominet and undermining .uk, more importantly. And I remember distinctly, not that long ago, Nominet was held up as the sort of an industry leader in this industry. Everyone would be watching, what's .uk doing? And it was always leading the industry. It was always something that people followed. And Nominet has started losing that edge. And I think the big reason for that was because of these continued fights. It chewed up a lot of energy. It chewed up a lot of time that should have been spent building Nominet up. So I wanted to join Nominet in the hope of getting back to that place. And the reason why I felt I could do it was because I'd been a journalist a long time. I'd been sort of the general manager of public participation at ICANN. So I sort of had the right skills for involving people and communicating or pushing for communication. So what I see as how we get from where Nominet is now, which is in a good-ish place, but still with a lot of issues, to the future, where .uk is seen as, again, as industry leading. This is my little model that I've built. It's not the Nominet model, it's Kieren's mental model. So we'll go through Kieren's brain right now. Trust, I think it's one of 4 issues, but it's fundamental. The truth is that there remains an insufficient level of trust between members, Nominet is a member organization, and the organization itself. And it has to be worked on now. It's a process. You can't just gain trust straight away. And the way that the board is currently tackling it, and the staff, is their view is, if we just do a really good job and we do it for a long period of time, trust will be built up. That's how they're approaching it. And which is partly true, but there's a very significant cultural component, and that's what I'm sort of that's the role I'm trying to play within the board, is to point out there's a clear cultural component to building up trust. And then, and then internally, there's some frustration at this, what I'm calling determined opposition. Every time Nominet does something, almost anything, there's almost an aggressive response to it, and that creates frustration, especially if you work hard on something, and then you put it out, and 99% of it is actually really good, and then all the focus is on the one thing that isn't right. That gets tiring, especially if you spend an enormous amount of time on it. The next thing is culture. And it's not something that any corporation or organization is terribly good at, and it's the hardest thing to change. But there is a fundamental culture issue, and the Nominet won't get to where it needs to be until it's tackled it. And I would describe it as largely disengaged. Unfortunately, that's how I describe the majority of the culture of .uk, the registry, and how it interacts with the people buying and selling domain names is disengaged. There's not many of you here, for example. Nominet isn't sponsoring this conference, for example, there's this disconnect. And the reason there's the disconnect is there's been this long, like I said, repeat fights and battles and disagreements. And so what's happened is the members who are running businesses have got better things to do. Nominet has got bitten so many times from its perspective. It says, well, we're just going to do what we're going to do. And they're not talking very much to one another. So it's disengaged, and that's not helpful. It's not going to work. Bomb bunker, this is the sort of the flip. With the people that are engaged are typically very annoyed with the past and annoyed with Nominet, and when you're on the inside, the way you feel that is bombs are basically hurled at you. Something happens, and then it blows up, and there's an argument for 4 days about the same thing. And so it feels like bombs are being hurled over the wall at you. So that's from me talking from like the perspective of being on the board. And as a result, not so much me, as you see I'm standing up here, but definitely the staff, they adopt a sort of bunker mentality, which is basically batten down the hatches, here comes another bomb. We have to stop that. That is fundamentally destructive, and somehow we have to get around that. When everybody is tired of fighting with one another, you always fall back. I know this is more of an observation. You fall back on the registry operations. Nominet does a good job running .uk. .uk runs really well. It's a good registry. The system is good. I've yet to hear a complaint. You tell me if you have complaints about how it runs as a function, but I've yet to hear one. It runs really well. It will run better. It will have lower latency with the new technology, et cetera, but it fundamentally runs really well. And so I've noticed that whenever people are tired of fighting, they fall back to, well, let's talk about how the registry operates, because everyone can agree it's a good job. So where I want to try and move the organization, obviously I'm only one person on a board, and I'm a non-exec. So there's only so much I can do, but where I want Nominet to move to is more collegial rather than adversarial. And that's, most member organizations are able to do that. Basically working together. What's your issues? Well, we can come up with a solution. We're thinking of doing this. Well, let's give us some feedback. It's not rocket science. It's how it should be working. And that's how I keep thinking about things, is that how do we make this more collegial? How do we stop fighting with one another and figure out how to work together? And then the way to do it is to rebuild around strengths. Nominet does have a lot of strengths. And to find shared goals. That's the key, I think, the key component. We have to find things that we can work together on, which leads to innovation. Now, you may disagree with me, but I follow the domain name industry for a long time now, and I think one of the issues is that there's not been very much innovation for the last, I don't know, decade or so. It's been, here's a registry, we sell domain names. In the early days, how long ago now? 15 years, 20 years ago, it was pretty exciting. You know, it was a hell of a lot of movement, particularly at ICANN meetings. There was a lot of movement. There was a lot of innovation. There was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of code being written. There was a lot of new models being done. There were people creating businesses to sell them on. It was quite an exciting time. For whatever reason, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the domain name industry has slowed in that sense. It's become a sort of almost a static industry, and I think part of the issue with Nominet is that it was set up, Nominet was so successful because it was focused on the market, focused on innovation, and when there hasn't been any of that, it's created a tension. But things are changing. I'd be interested in your views, you're all in the industry. I've seen quite a lot of change recently, not just consolidation in the market, although that is happening, but there are new technologies. There's a big focus on security. Someone was asking earlier today, they were saying, well, you're just allowing any registration of domains, and that's insecure. There's been a big shift towards greater security for all the reasons that you can go through. The malware has gone through the roof. Child abuse images have gone through the roof. The internet's moved on, there's more people on this. Security is a fundamental topic that's not going away. And our industry isn't doing enough about it. So there's a big opportunity there. There's new domains coming, there's new GTLDs coming. Who knows if that will finally shift? It didn't really shift last time, but it might next time. There's AI, there's blockchain, there's a whole bunch, I could go on and on about it, but there seems to be a lot of changes happening in the internet market. Digital IDs, I think there's a big space for digital IDs and domain names coming up. So I think the UK can be a source of new ideas and new markets, and it should do. Someone else is going to do it if we don't. And so I think that if we can get back to the position where we're looking ahead and thinking what's coming down the line and how do we do it better, which is what a member organization can and should be doing, then I think that'll be a key driver for Nominet and for the industry. Yeah, and then connected to the communications is the other missing ingredient to making this all work. Currently, Nominet's communications are defensive and they're cautious. There's no point denying it, they are. Nominet tends to react to things rather than be proactive. It is always concerned about communicating rather than wanting to communicate. This is a fundamental problem. It's safer, the reality is, having been on the inside of it, it's safer and easier not to communicate than it is to communicate. You have to push to communicate, and I've experienced this sort of personally multiple times. It's actually much harder to communicate and more troublesome to communicate than it is not to. And that has to change, but that's the reality of it when you're on the inside of it. Is you get a headache by communicating. It doesn't work in your favor. But it is fundamental for trust. If you don't communicate, you can't build trust. No one knows what you're doing. It can use to signal cultural change, and there is a cultural change going on right now. You won't see it, you won't know about it because you don't live in Nominet. And so communications can signal that very clearly. You get a different style of email, or you get contacted a different way, and you can say, this is what we're thinking about now, this is what we're doing now, and it signals that change. And then it's best done through innovation. The reality is that you can only get, I don't know how many emails you get, but as a Nominet member, I would say most of my communications are, we're going to have maintenance in a week's time. And that's like 85% of the communications that I get from Nominet. There's only so much you can do with that. Real communications is going to be about the tying with innovation. It's like, this is what we're doing, we're having a meeting about this, we're thinking about this, what do you think about this? That communications. So that's what will make it work better. And so you take those four, and the important and difficult component is they all interact heavily with one another. The comms and culture, the comms and innovation, the trust, and they all interact, and it's really important to view them as crossing over one another, impacting on one another, interacting with one another. And then if you get it all right and you're in the middle, then you're doing things well. So that's my personal sort of model in my head for the job that I'm trying to do within Nominet. So what's it like on the board? And I say this because a lot of people are always quite interested in what it's like on the board. It's been such a hotbed of intrigue for so long. People are sort of interested in what it's actually like to be sat on the board of Nominet, which for some people is very exciting. For most people, they've never even heard of Nominet. But here's what it's like on the board. It's much better than you would think. In the past, it has, and I'm looking at Phil, in the past, the board has not been the loveliest place to be. And it's significantly better, I think is fair to say. They're actually a very good team. There's people that have knowledge, very good knowledge in some areas, and it's satisfying to see someone, for example, talking about finances, and someone who really knows what they're talking about and really digs into the details and then asks very pertinent questions. So and then we tend to work together, we talk to one another. It actually works pretty well as a board. There's a very healthy tension in the sense that I'm coming from a sort of journalistic industry mindset. There's other people who have been doing finances for their whole lives. There's the chair who's trying to figure out how to move forward. So there's quite a lot of tension between what Nominet does and how we should approach it. But the good thing is the discussion is respectful. It's always, even when I say something which I know they think, what on earth are you talking about? And it's typically around member engagement. They hear me out and I hear them out. And it's not rocket science, but that's how it's working. People are listening to one another and respecting the view, even if they don't agree with it, and that's how it should work. What I mean by professional, I mean that we've all been in situations where you have a disagreement with someone and it becomes a personal beef. In Nominet, it's very professional. I've had strong disagreements with people on specific issues, and it's resolved. You know, you go and you sit and you have an adult conversation about it, and you figure it out. You explain where your perspectives were. You understand. You talk about why you got frustrated with their response. You walk it through. Next meeting is done. You've both understood each other's perspective. So in that sense, it's professional. The reason why I say this is sort of daft that I need to say this, but Nominet has been such a closed box for so long that I think it's important for you to know what it's like being on the board. And it's pretty good. It's a good board. I've seen been a staffer with some boards that has not been good. The general approach is to encourage but challenge. That's how I would say the board approaches the executive. They encourage them to bring forward, but we challenge each component of it. Equally, within the board, I think we encourage people to bring forward their views, but we challenge them as well. So that's the culture. I don't know whether your eyes are glazing over at this point, but when I thought, I'll write down what it's like on the board, and if you want, I can skip. Put up your hand if you want me to skip this bit, if this is dull or if this is interesting. No, sort of falling asleep, Kieren. It's a very heavy workload, it really is. I hope that will be done in the next year. It's a lot of work. I thought it would be a lot of work, but my God. We have like 150 pages for board meetings, which of dense stuff. It's because there's a lot going on, and it's a heavy workload. And I think the reason I say that is it's important that you know that there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of thought going into it. And the overall focus is on building up Nominet. I mean, that's how it is. That's the good news, is that each component of it is how do you rebuild this organization to be the best it can be. That's what's going on. This is where I'm least happy. And I know Nominet won't love me for putting up a slide saying where I'm least happy, but none of my fellow board members will be surprised by this list, because this is the stuff that whenever I have an opportunity I raise within board meetings, and Phil can vouch for me on this. Member engagement is still poor to really poor, is how I would describe it. There isn't a culture of, and I still don't, I'm literally trying to understand why it isn't better. There is not a culture of engaging with members, and I don't understand why. I'm trying to understand on your behalf why. Part of the problem, and the truth is it's made harder by member behavior. The number of times I have urged and encouraged someone to go on a little bit more of a limb, say something, put something out there, and then they have been shot down or personally attacked. It's really difficult. And then that person will then, next time I say, well, we should engage more with the members, that person sort of looks at me and looks, are you crazy? Last time I did that, I spent 4 days dealing with angry emails. So that's the truth of it. It's hard to shift. It needs to shift, it will shift, but it's hard to do it, or each time you get a lot of anger back at you. The communications are poor to very poor. They are. And there's, as far as I can see it, there's two major reasons for this. One is it's a cultural issue. Communications is always a cultural issue. It's very difficult. You have to have the right people. You have to have the right mindset. You have to have the organization has to want to share information. It's difficult. And the structure isn't right either, at all. There's too many people separated across, this is getting far too in the weeds, too many people across divisions that need to come together. It's something the board is working on, it's something the staff is working on. In the next year, the communication should be much better. It's a focus, it will get better. But I'm not happy with it. And then transparency I really wasn't sure. It's never clear and never has been clear how Nominet makes decisions. And Nominet has made some really bad decisions in the past. And what's really frustrating about it is you want to know, well, how the hell did you reach this decision? And of course, then you suspect they're making crazy decisions. It's fundamentally not working. Something's going on. And in some cases it was. In many cases it's not. I can tell you from having gone through a year of board reports and a year of decisions, and there's a lot of decisions made every time, is that the decision making is solid. It's good. It's not the best I've seen. It's definitely better than other organizations that I've worked for. It's pretty solid. The papers are good, the explanations are good, the challenging is good, the feedback is good. The ultimate decision is typically the right one, pragmatic one. If the board doesn't feel that there's enough information or the structure's not right or they need more, it's sent back and you say, bring it back again. Is it what you would want to see in an organization? But none of it is visible. And I know that Nominet members are constantly furious about this, and yet culturally, Nominet isn't prepared yet to show you it's working. It should do, and you would all be much more confident in if it did. So that's what I'm trying to push. I don't know how long it's going to take me and others, it's not just me, to get the organization comfortable with sharing its thinking. But I can tell you that I'm comfortable with how it makes those decisions. It does a pretty good job. Where I'm most happy is the execs, they're focused and they're working very hard on improvements. The new CTO is doing a massive tech refresh. The new CFO is doing a massive systems refresh and rethink of how she does it. The CEO is thinking about the organization as a whole and what direction to move forward. They're working very hard, which is part of the reason we've got so many board papers. And they're doing well. You don't see it. You, for now, have to take my word for it. The board is open-minded. I feared a little bit going into Nominet that it would be pre-decided. And in the past, there have been pre-decided decisions, and then things have been made to fit. That's not how the board is. They're open-minded, and they're very pragmatic. And what I mean by pragmatic is decisions are made on the basis of, is this going to move us forward in the right direction, in the right timeline? It's what you would hope to happen, but I'm here to tell you it's what happens. And the decisions are made in the right direction. The right direction is, how do you take Nominet to being, the best registry? It's going to sound silly, but the best registry in the world. How do you move it, the organization, from where we are to where we're going? And each decision is made with that in the back of your mind, which is what a board's supposed to do. Oh, yeah, community dispute. I thought I'd better put this in. Nominet wouldn't be Nominet if there wasn't a series of disputes happening at any given time, and there is. Bylaw changes are going through right now. There's disagreement over what they should be and what they mean. Election candidates, there's an election coming up. There are 2 candidates are not standing or not included on the ballot. And that's caused a lot of dispute. And then member events, there's disagreement right now about the type of member events, how often they should be, where they should be, and so on and so forth. And that's something that I think is worth arguing about, to be honest with you. On the horizon, and by this I mean next year, 2 years, pricing, which will be, I would guess, the thing of most importance to everyone in this room. Voting rights, a persistent issue for Nominet for as long as I've known Nominet. New GTRDs, what will be the impact of that? What will Nominet's role be in that? How will the industry change? And then registry standardization. Nominet is trying to move to more, I'm not going to say the ICANN model, but the sort of the industry standard model, which I think is a good thing, but I know there are issues. I actually think Nominet should be able to leapfrog that model and be at the better model, because there's lots of issues right now with EPP and so on. I'm getting far too in the details. But I think we can leapfrog it and come up with a better system. Right, so this is the work in, it's missing part of it, but the work in progress, I think that says, this is what's going on right now, to my mind, on the board. There's a governance issue, there's day-to-day, and there's strategic. The articles consultation, which I hope you are aware of the corporate documents, which are, they've been added to over the years. They haven't been updated properly since '96, which is horribly out of date. There's ambiguities in it, as Jim will know, and the idea is to refresh it and get to a better place. The goal, clarity, and foundation. The consultation was open for 2 months. I put that in there purely for my own ego, because I was going to be 1 month, and I said, there's been so many occasions in which Nominet has done a 1 month consultation, and the members have been furious because the 1 month is too short. It has to be longer than that. So as an example, small example, an example of how it's changing a little bit. 2 months is sufficient time. And then the next step's a review of that feedback. That's going on right now. Report back to the membership. There's going to be a board meeting early September, and then another one on the 26th of September. I think the feedback will come in between the two, and then it will be put to a vote at the AGM. From what I understand, the feedback is, we've already seen the feedback. The feedback is what we expected the feedback to be. So I think now it's a matter of like walking through, making changes to clarify things, explaining positions, and then putting it to a vote. I talked a little bit about technology refresh. I'll rush through this. It's updating the core systems. This shift to more modern architecture, technology has changed massively in recent years, massively. And so there's a whole shift. I won't walk you through it all. If you want to, you should ask the CTO for a rundown. The CTO can talk about this for hours. That's his entire job. And it's an investment in the future of Nominet and the .uk registry. At the end of it, Nominet should be, how do you judge it? But it should be one of the best technological registries in place, and it's a foundation on which to build on. It's complex, and it's chewing up a lot of time at the board level because it's got to be done right, but you won't see any of it. Hopefully you won't see any of it. You shouldn't see any of it. You should just see, oh, the registry is working a little bit faster. You shouldn't really be seeing any of it, but just so you know, an enormous amount of time and energy and thoughts being put into this. That's what Nominet's been up to. And then I think I'm near the end. Strategic public benefit is complicated in the sense that Nominet has always taken its surplus revenues and put it into what it calls public benefit, what it's also called social impact, and quite a lot of money recently. And we've put a pause, the board put a pause on the spending because we didn't feel that it was, we felt that it needed a rethink of how we did this. And then the part of that rethink would be spend more of this money on technical projects, things connected, closer connected to what Nominet does, runs a registry, etc. And so I'm kind of excited about that, but it does require a bit of a think, and that's why there's a pause, and that's what we're working on. And then you have to decide what public benefit actually is. We went around the room and described, this is board level and staff too, described what we thought it was, and it was 7 different definitions. So we could reach an agreement on what is this, what does this mean, and therefore how do we decide on it going forward? And then that will be clearly communicated. Communications. The strategically, we are working on how do we communicate, what do we communicate, and two-way communication. A lot of it is one-way communication, which is not good. It will be a lot more two-way communication. There's a lot of knowledge in the community. There's a lot of knowledge in members, and it is not feeding into Nominet, and Nominet isn't feeding its knowledge out. And it's just how you do that is you communicate. And in the future of .uk and the UNS, what are the main goals? How's it changing? I was talking to InternetX. I loved the InternetX CEDO global domain report that came out whenever it came out. And I thought that was really good. I mean, it's imperfect, but these things always are. But what it showed to me, which I then showed to the board, was that .uk is underperforming. It should be, there's a whole bunch of things I could walk through it. But, for example, the price of .uk domains in the secondary market is so much lower than comparable TLDs. The amount of movement in that market is much lower. The premium, the number of people, I was talking to InternetX and CEDO about how they got, where these stats came from. I asked them, one was like the premium names, and that is people that are paying CEDO to put their names up a little bit higher because they think people are going to want this name, get above the chaff. People aren't doing that with .uk domains, and that, to my mind, speaks to a sort of lowering of excitement. People should say, if I've got a good .uk, they should want to put that up the top so that people are bidding for it. So there's this general sense that, and I know there's been long tensions between Nominet and the secondary market, But the secondary market is part of the industry, it's part of the market, part of the registry, and if one is healthy, the other is healthy. And so Nominet doesn't see that right now, and it needs to see it. And I thought the CEDAW report, which I enjoyed going through, pointed to a couple of quite good indicators of how you can judge how it's doing. And I don't think .uk I think it's punching below its weight. I think it's a really solid registry that needs to refresh and rethink itself. And oh yeah, this is a quick rundown of what's going on. I don't know whether this will be interesting to Nominet insiders. In September, we've got the articles consultation will be closing. The summary of that will come to the board. The board will communicate with members. Then the start of the election starts. There'll be a board meeting over the articles to decide what to put forward. In October, the election will be finished. There's a board meeting on broad strategy. Then there's the AGM where there'll be a vote. And then in November, there's a board meeting, and there's something missing off the bottom. Oh, I know what it is. That's the strategy on the registry, general registry strategy, and pricing, which is something I know that you will be interested / angry about. Oh, and I wanted to say on pricing, actually, while I was there, that another thing about making .uk a better value proposition. I was digging into the domain market. I've known the domain market for a long time, but I've been sort of out of it. And that is that if it's a very healthy market, you can charge, if you get hold of a good name, you can charge a lot more than you pay for it. And I'm thinking that one way in which Nominet can find peace with the secondary market is to basically make .uk much more valuable, in the sense that people want .uk domains more, and therefore, if you are a domainer, you're able to sell it for a higher amount. And then that, to a degree, reduces this issue on pricing. I think the focus on pricing is a symptom of Nominet not having invested enough in the value of .uk. That's how I see it. I'd be interested in your views. But I think it's the arguments over the pricing is a symptom of not having invested enough in .uk itself. If .uk domains were selling at the same level, .coms are terrible. .com's its own thing. But if it was selling at the same level as even .eu, I think there would be, everybody would be much happier, because there would be a sort of a bigger sense of .uk was a really good registry. I think the secondary market would be making more money, and I think people would be coming in and out, there'd be more of a sense of energy. So that's something I want to push out there. I'm aware of it. I would love to hear your views on that. Oh yeah, so what I'm interested to hear from you, a sense of how things are going. I suspect, having been on the board for a year, that you are not seeing very much of this. Part of that because a lot of it is internal. Part of it is the communication remains terrible. Part of that is the member engagement remains poor. And so I suspect, but you tell me what you think, that you're not really seeing any of this. And this may be the first time you even heard anyone talking about it. I'd love to know what you see is happening in the .uk and the domain name market. I'm not in it day to day anymore, so I'm a little bit rusty on it. I've enjoyed conversations I've had here today, but I'd love to hear more about it. I need to understand the market better. How Nominet could aid innovation, genuine, I think that's what will have to come from the membership. The .uk, I mean, Nominet runs the registry. There's a huge number of things that you can do running a registry to make the market work better. Nominet doesn't know what they are because it's running the registry. We need a feedback loop, better communications, and so members will come up with ideas for, if we were able to do this, we could do this. And if Nominet can learn to open its ears to that, we can have a sort of a virtuous circle. So any thoughts you have on innovation, I would really appreciate. I was going on about collegial relationship, how to build that collegial relationship and get away from this sort of antagonistic approach. And if this presentation was of any use to you at all, or whether you thought, well, you know, nice try, Kieren, but that was boring. So if any feedback on whether this was actually of use or what I could do differently. Because so, you know, I intend to come back next year if I'm invited, and I'd like to do a better presentation. So anything on that? So that's, have I run up with time? That's...
I just
That's where I
wasn't
am.
clear if you're opening it right now or you want to conclude and
I
then
think so. I
open?
mean, this is where to find me. I'll be here. I'll be here a bit tomorrow. Any member events, I will always try and attend. I can't attend the one in December. No, August. And those are my details. Email, X, and Mastodon, because whoever hates Twitter on Mastodon.
Thank you so much, Kieren. In particular, thanks for your transparency and dedicated work. We're going to open it up for questions or comments from the audience. Anyone have questions or a comment?
Yeah, just hold it. Hi. Could you clarify what you meant when you were talking pricing and in your comparison with EU? Because I'm not quite sure I understand. Do you mean .uk should be cheaper because wholesale.eus are cheaper, and we should sell less of them because EUs are about 1/10 of the registrations of the UK? Or was it just an off the cuff, you picked the wrong TLD?
I immediately regretted saying .eu. The second I said it is the truth. I ran through and I was like, I went straight for .com and I realized that was insane. Then I panicked and said .eu.
Okay.
I apologize.
Right.
Can't get anything past this audience. We have a comment over here.
It's more comment and solidarity with those running a registry. My name's James from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. We run the SMS Sender ID registry here in the UK, so all government departments are part of it. The major banks in the UK are part of it. Big retailers are part of it. But it isn't perfect.
No.
And we find as well, you would think that the whole industry would pull together to protect consumers and ultimately protect themselves, but unfortunately, it isn't the case. There are very well-known brands out there, particularly, I would say, on the logistics side of things, who have no interest in becoming part of the program we run. Quite simply because all of you and me, we are the consumers receiving the parcels, but we are not the logistics company's clients. It's the John Lewis, the Amazons, etc. of the world who are their clients. Yet, when it comes to social media, someone dares say the wrong thing on X or anything like that against them, their lawyers are all over you like an absolute rash. You're being sued to kingdom come. So it absolutely isn't perfect. But what I would say is, when it comes to engaging with your members, whoever your members are and whoever your clients are, there is the world I come from, and this is my first experience of the domain world, so I'm learning today and tomorrow, and that is the world of business messaging. So you talk about two-way chats. There is WhatsApp business, dare I say SMS, and SMS surveys, things like that are absolutely fantastic. So just using email to interact with all your members, it's history. And you mentioned that 85% of your interactions with your members are to say there's downtime, there's this, there's that. So turning it around, it's going to take a long time. I personally appreciate very much and applaud you for being, Kieren, for being so open with the issues. There are very, very few presentations I've sat at in all my decades in the world of work where someone has been so open about the issues that need to be fixed. But please don't ignore the world of business messaging. I've got Cisco here tomorrow as well, who are in business messaging on a huge as well. And there are so many people I know who can help bring some amazing messaging solutions to you and indeed all your organizations. So please don't just think it's email out there. There's so much more. So that's it, just an observation.
Right.
But
Appreciate
thank you very
that.
much. Thank you.
Appreciate that. I was going to say, I got a note here, which I actually think it's probably worthwhile, is that Phil Buckingham, I don't know if you know Phil Buckingham, but Phil's in the room, and Phil,
stand up, please.
Phil was on the board for a long time, including like the really insane EGM days, and so he's not on the board anymore. So I think it's worthwhile flagging that and saying thank you, Phil, because he has been your voice of this industry on the board through difficult times for a long time. So go talk to Phil, yeah. Cheers.
And we do have another question here from David.
Hi, I'm sort of cross between a question and a comment, I think, really. Just kind of be interested to get your thoughts on whether it seems to me that the lack of uptake of .uk compared with .co.uk is kind of a bit symptomatic and reflective of what we've seen in the new GTLD industry generally. In 2012 we were told that all banks would have a .bank, all the rest of it. But actually, in a sort of ironic sense for an industry like the domain industry, which is tech-based and quite new, there is a lot of inertia to it. People still use .coms, still 10 times as many .coms as anything else, simply because that's the way it's always been done. And I think the same is kind of true of .co.uk versus .uk. I just wondered if you would agree with that, or if you've got any sort of other thoughts. Well,
yeah, so as with everything in Nominet, you don't know it, but you've opened a massive can of worms by talking about .uk. I was a pretty strong critic of the plan to just go with .uk. I still would love to know the full reasoning that Nominet had to do that. And I don't think it's panned out particularly well. I don't think it was a good strategic decision. If I was on the board right now, I wouldn't have approved it. I'd have argued strongly against it. But we are where we are. Part of the discussions that we'll be having at the board strategic level is like, so what do we do? We've got .co.uk's, we've got .uk's, we've got .org.uk's, and so on and so forth. What do we do? How do we make sense of this? On the bigger point you're making, I ran a company called .next, and we were running conferences during the excitement of new GTLDs. And I really thought it would go better than it has. I mean, I wasn't with the people who thought everybody was going to become a millionaire overnight, but I definitely thought it was going to spur some more energy and excitement than it has. And I think somebody mentioned earlier on about the .brands having been put in place, and then, I mean, they haven't failed in the sense that they didn't collapse, but they haven't taken off. And I'm still, even though that's the reality, I still think that some point down the line, we will start having .apples for things, and we will start going to whatever Adidas, or we'll go to .water. I do think that's coming. We've got it wrong right now. It was the industry is thinking, oh, we've sold there's 10 million of these, so therefore if we only sell 1 million horses, we're great to go. But there was actually, it was CentralNick. He was saying, well, we didn't build anything behind it. And that was true. It was an industry saying, here you go. And everyone was like, no, well, we're all right, thanks. So as an industry, we've got to figure that out. I would do want to say as well, I was thinking when he said we should put aside money for ICANN to have a marketing budget. I mean, I've worked at ICANN. That's just a waste of money. I mean, ICANN will never be able to market. There's no culture for that on any level. But what I would say is the industry can absolutely get together, and there's tons of models for this, and create an own semi-independent body that does marketing for the industry. This happens in every industry. I'm amazed the domain name industry hasn't done it yet. Is you all get together, you put a pot of money in, and you let it run semi-autonomously to market the industry. I'm amazed the domain name industry hasn't done that yet. It needs to do it if GTLDs are going to go anywhere. That's my personal opinion.
Well, I think the number of questions is a reflection on how much interest there is. We have another one here.
Hi, Kieren. I noticed you mentioned .nxt. There was quite a lot of adverse publicity about that, because weren't people left stranded when you cancelled that conference? But talking about Nominet, do you think it's right for Nominet to continue with this governance consultation at a time when the court has ruled that subscription fees are unlawful?
So you're going to love my answer. And the answer is, Jim, you have threatened to sue Nominet, and so therefore I can't answer any questions from you. That's my answer. That's the answer.
Thank you.